This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by G-Cals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Modeling from the Ensign's Chair is proud to partner with Models for Troops, a 501c3 charity that provides model kits, model supplies, and scale model literature to aid disabled and injured veterans suffering from PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and other post-combat related issues. Please visit www.modelsfortroops.com for more information and to find out ways you can contribute, because a model is more than just plastic. Hey, what's up, guys? Will here. Welcome back to Modeling from the Ensign's Chair. This is episode 8 of the 1400 scale Enterprise C build, and today is the day. We finally get to start putting some electronics in here, lighting everything up, putting it together. We get to start moving basically forward from here. Everything's been pretty much prepping parts, painting them, and everything. So I'm looking forward to today walking you through lighting this. We're starting with the nacelle. I've already got one completed here, and let's see how that shows up. You can see the copper on there, and you can see hanging here, this is I'm using the nav flasher board from Tena Controls, and you see how small that is. That'll fit anywhere. I'll either put it in the secondary hull or in the base to make it easier to work with. Excuse me. So at any rate, I've got some work done on this. I've made some mistakes. I haven't worked on this type of nacelle, like a next generation type cell or a nacelle, since probably about 30 years ago when I built the Enterprise D the first time. And so it's been a while, and back then I didn't even think of lighting this thing. I didn't do as complicated of a painting as I did on this nacelle. I've got all the pin striping done. There's a couple of things I got to work on. But at any rate, we're going to get into this. I just want to say real quick, though, that, this is, to remind everybody, the 40th anniversary of Wrath of Khan is this year. So, in recognition of that, if you go to flashbackcinema.net, I'm not getting paid for this or anything. This is just to let you guys know. Flashbackcinema.net is screening Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and this is the I think it's the restored director, the 4K digitally restored director's cut. So I think a couple months back, I think back in August or that, there was a showing of Star Trek IV. So now I have not seen Star Trek II in the theater. I did see it when I went out to California to see the Star Trek exhibit at the Skirball Center. But that was an outdoor setting. It was kind of a semi-casual thing. But this time it's actually going to be on the bigger screen at a movie theater. Here in Albuquerque, it's at the Icon Cinema. They're showing it on Wednesday of next week, so the 12th, and then this weekend, Sunday the 9th. Now that's nationwide. So if you go to flashbackcinema.net, they show the theaters that are going to be showing this. So if you're interested in checking it out, go to that website, find your theater that's closest to you, and go check it out. So I'm looking forward to that, almost as much as I'm looking forward to getting this build done. But at any rate, just wanted to let y'all know that. Give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench, and we'll actually get to work. All right, so let's take a look at what I did and talk about what worked and what didn't work. Now, I painted up all the assembly here last episode, and what I did was, in between last episode and now, I painted the chiller grills, and I used this metallic antique copper from Folkart. And I probably should have went with just a regular copper instead of antique. The antique, apparently, it looks a little darker than what the copper should be, but it's all right. I mean, it works. I just think it's just a little bit, maybe a shade darker than the regular copper would have been. But at any rate, the way I did this was I loaded it up in my airbrush, and I sprayed thin coats on here until I got to where the blue wasn't showing through anymore, and I had a decent coat of copper on there. And then, like I said, you've got to seal the craft paint. Once you get it where you want it, you need to seal it with a clear coat. So I did that, but I only did one coat. Usually I do at least 2 or 3. I only did one coat though because I knew once I got this assembled, I was going to do at least another coat or 2, clear coat, once I got everything done. Well, the thing is, I got this together, and remember I said that even with the grills that come with the kit, there's little spots where you might have little light bleeds or little light leaks, little gaps or that. And I had a couple of those. Well, I don't know why, but my first thought was, well, I'll just use a little perfect plastic putty, wet it a little bit, and let it just kind of sink into those spots. So I started doing that, and the problem is because I only put the one coat, clear coat on this, this stuff comes off with just water if you don't clear coat it well enough. And unfortunately, it started to mess with, I started seeing blue showing again on the grills where the water was just kind of causing the paint to come off. And I came over it and tried to just touch it up by spraying a little more copper on it. Well, the problem is that when you do that, the spot where the copper came off some gets one coat, and meanwhile all these other areas keep getting additional coats, and you could tell you never get rid of it. It always shows through when you backlight this. It shows where that spot where the paint came off at. So I had to go strip this all down. Now, I'd already sealed this up. That wasn't glued in place. I already sealed this up, so the only option I had to do was to try to strip it off while it was in place. And I knew I had several coats of clear coat on this part. I wasn't too worried about it. I came in, started stripping off. I used a little bit of airbrush, thinner, and was taking it off. And there were a couple spots though where it would not come off. I would sit there with a Q-tip and scrub it with the airbrush, and it just would not, the airbrush thinner, and it just would not come off. So I had to come in with my pointer here and kind of scrape the paint out of the fins here. And unfortunately, the problem is, even though I was trying to be careful with it, you can tell when you look at this under the light and see the reflection, you can tell that the spots where I did it at, it's not as reflective. Now, just sitting like this on the ship, it's fine, it looks fine. But when I hold it under light, and you can see in the reflection there, you just see where it's not quite even because I had to scrape off the paint. Came back, anyway, I got it cleared off. I came back over it with the copper, and it looks fine. Like I said, once I got that copper coat on there, it's just that when you hold it under a light, and you can see where just those imperfections reflect, and you can tell where those imperfections are at. But when you're not holding it under bright light and you're not looking at it, scrutinizing it, you can't tell the difference. It looks fine. So not too worried about that. I think it's fine as it is. I did have to come back and do a little touch-up of paint in a couple spots where the thinner started to take off a little bit of the paint around the edges here of the body of the nacelle. So anyway, I got that all taken care of. Everything looked good. I added this color up the front. I did a yellow, actually it's an antique gold from Deco Art. And then I came over it, lightly came over it with my X26 clear orange, and that's because it's supposed to have a bit of an orange tint to it. If you look at the studio model, you'll see it has a bit of orange to it. So that turned out well. I like it in comparison to the way the studio model or studio photos look of that spot. So I'm good with that. I did add my my 2 little stripes up here. The only mistake I made on painting this is I did leave out on the back here, I left out, there's like a little trapezoid shape, I guess you would say, right here. And then there's also a rectangle on the back end right here. There's also a rectangle on the underside here, so I got to add those. Let me show you a picture of those so you see what I'm talking about. Pull that up real quick. But yeah, you see on the back side there, just above the chiller grill, in between the RCS thrusters, there's that one like trapezoid. I don't know if that's trapezoid or what, but whatever shape that is, there's a shape there, and then just above that, there's a rectangle, and then I don't know if you can make it out because of the lighting on this. It's hard to see, but on the underside of the nacelle there too, there's also another rectangle. So I've got to add those in, and that won't be hard to do, but I do have one other issue I've got to correct. Now, let's go ahead and plug this in so you can see how this lights up. And you see that once I light this up, you don't really see the copper. It shines right through the copper. And that's the camera is kind of overexposing those LEDs. They're not as visible as that. They are a little bit visible because I didn't... usually what I'll do is when I do LED strip light, and I'll put a thin piece of sheet styrene over it to kind of help disperse the light. I didn't do that in this one, and I didn't even think about it until after I sealed it up. So I can't do anything about that. It looks fine, only when you flip it over and you look directly up at it. Now, like I said, the camera's overexposing it. It doesn't look that noticeable, but it is noticeable when you look up at it. But if the nacelle is going to be displayed like this, and you're not going to notice it, it's fine. I'm not too worried about that. But there is one issue with this, and let me turn this out so you can see it a little bit easier. Put this back on so you can see how that lights up. And again, it's overexposing it because this is showing like a bright white, and you don't see that at all. It's just a nice red glow on this, looking at it in person. But on the back here, you'll notice this spot right here, and what that is that's the alignment pin, to align the nacelle properly, the top half and the bottom half. You don't really need that. I didn't even put glue on it. So I'm not going to crack this open to do it. I think the easiest thing to do, what I'm going to do is drill a small hole. Should be about right here. I'm going to look at the other one that I haven't put together yet and figure out exactly where I need to drill that hole. But I'm going to drill a hole in here and remove that pin. That way I don't have that showing through the back there. I didn't even notice it until I was stripping the paint off, and then when I repainted, I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, look at that, it's showing through there. Now the funny thing is, I think Cass over at Lake Monster Details and I have kind of an ESP connection sometimes, because the day after I noticed that issue, I get a message from Cass, and Cass is like, hey, by the way, on that packaging. Now, I didn't open the packaging. I cut a slit here because I want to keep the packaging intact when I showed all y'all this last episode. But it says if you flip open the flap, there is a note on there that says, this is highly recommended if you want a fully seamless look with your warp nacelles, and it's cutting that locator pin off. And I had to tell Cass, well, thanks, Cass. Appreciate it. It's a little late, but... Anyway, I thought that was funny when he happened to mention that the next day after I was like, oh, I've got to do something about that. So at first I wasn't going to mess with it, but I don't think it's going to be that difficult. I think I could drill a small hole here, get that pin removed, and then fill it, and it should be fine. And then I've got to paint that blue rectangle on the back here anyway, so it's going to require touch-up painting anyway. So... that's what I'm going to do with that. You can see the lighting on this again. Let me turn this light off. And I've got that flashing strobe back here. And what I'm using is, like I mentioned, I'm using Tena Control's little Enterprise D nav board is all I'm using. And you see how small that thing is. It's really small. You can fit this in. I could almost fit it in the nacelle itself, but of course there's no purpose in that. I've got two nacelles I got to do. I'll either put it in the secondary hull or down in the base when I get it done. So this is like 30 bucks. It's real easy. It's 3 wires basically. You got your positive, your negative that run into the board, and you really only need one positive wire connecting to this nacelle. I've got two positives and two negatives. Remember that I ran up through the little wing section here, and that's because I want the flasher on a separate circuit, because I've seen before putting the flashers on the same circuit as your static lights, which is basically your lights that just stay on all the time. Sometimes you'll notice a little dim on it every time the light flashes. So probably won't be a problem, probably wouldn't be an issue, but I didn't want to take the chance, so I put two circuits in just to make sure. I didn't want to seal this up and only have one set of pair of wires going up, and then realize there's an issue. So if that issue would have come up, I could easily remedy it, because I've got two separate circuits for it. So there's two circuits running into this impulse engine. There's just the steady on or static lighting, which is the LED in the front, which you can see right there. And I've got one LED strip right here, which is right now. This is actually isn't LED strip I bought. This is actually leftover, excuse me, leftover blue LED strip from when I did, I think this might be from Brian's NX01 build. I didn't use the blue LED strip came with it. I used a different one, and I had this left over, and I figured I might as well use it. So that's what I'm using. I did try lighting this at first with a white LED strip, and it just wasn't blue enough to me. Cass did say he's going to add a little more dye to it. I mean, it's not a big deal. Personally, I think it's better to just go ahead and use a blue LED strip anyway. That way, if you do get any light leaks, it's going to be less noticeable, because it'll be blue. It won't be white. So that's my recommendation for that. Just use a blue LED strip inside there. And I really, the way these Cass made these is you've got this piece in the front. And basically, I drilled a 3mm hole there, ran my wires through, and mounted this front LED, this red LED, to the front here. And I didn't even have to do any additional light block. And if you look through the front here, maybe if I turn the light off, you might be able to make it out in the camera. No, I actually can't make it out at all. If you look at it in person, you can see just a little bit of red towards the front. But I actually think it kind of looks cool that way, because it's almost like a transition from the red bustard collector into the blue. There's no actual blue looking at it this way, but if I look towards the front, I can see just a little bit of red in there. And I kind of like the effect. So I didn't have to do any light blocking between the front and the back. And there's no bleed over at all of the blue. Now if you look through here, and again you can't see it because it's going to wash it out. You can see the blue back there, but none of it makes it to the front here to affect the lighting on the bustard. So it's real simple lighting with that part that Cass sends or has for this kit. And it looks real nice once you paint it with the copper, and it lights up. As you can see, it lights up real nice too, even with the copper paint on it. So really happy with these parts. So anyway, that's what I've done with this. Those are a couple of mistakes I made with this. I did end up, instead of puttying, I came in and the little spaces I had, I filled with micro crystal clear. I let it dry before I reapplied the copper after I had to remove it that time. I let it dry, and then I came back in and reapplied the copper, and of course, this micro crystal clear went dry as clear, so that got a copper coat on it, and you can't even tell where I applied the crystal clear at on this. So it turned out real nice. I'm really happy with it. I just got to make that one correction and remove that pin, and she'll be good to go. So when we actually go through this build, we'll make sure we go ahead and remove that so we don't have to worry about it later. So at any rate, that's just a quick recap of where I'm at with this, what I've done to this one nacelle, and where I'm trying to go with the other nacelle that we're going to work on together here. So give me a minute. I'm going to get all my stuff set up. I kind of want to go over a couple things as far as what I'm using to do this. And hopefully when we're done with this, you'll be able to take what I've gone over and use it. And, you don't have to be building Enterprise C. You could be building any Star Trek model, any model period. And hopefully the information I'm getting ready to give you, you'll be able to use to do some lighting if you've never done lighting before. I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. So when I get done going over this, hopefully it'll be a little bit simpler to you, a little easier to digest. So give me a minute. I'm going to get everything set up, and we'll come back and we'll start working on that other nacelle. All right, so here we go. We've got the parts laid out. Now I've already taken the step of cutting off that locator pin in the back and getting rid of that on both sides, so that won't be an issue in this one. I also have drilled these holes where these lights need to go in the front and back, and that was with a 1/32 drill bit. And the reason why I use a 1/32 drill bit is because it makes it the perfect size for using the SMDs and getting them to snug right in place. Now for this this part of the build, you're going to need a red SMD and you're going to need a white SMD. And these SMDs, I'll put the link down below to show you, so make it easy for you to find. These are 0402 SMDs, by the way, so they're really small. And the only thing with these, you can get these pre-wired, but if you get them pre-wired, you won't be able to fit them through the hole because obviously it'll have a resistor on it already. So in order to get these to fit through the hole, you're going to need them pre-wired, but not pre-resistored. So basically what I do with these, this is the red one, and the red is going to go in the front. So you can see how small this is. Get these lined up, and basically I'll put these wires through the front here. If I can get this red one to cooperate. There we go. All right, so we've got that threaded through, and I'll pull that in, and you can see, see if we can get this to focus here. You can see where that SMD has snugged right into place perfectly in that 1/32 drill bit hole. So it's a perfect size to fit in there, and it'll be more in scale than if you try to stick a 3mm, or like I said, in most cases I used to use a lot of fiber optic, but I'm trying to get away from that. So we got this threaded in, and this is actually going to be wired towards the front here, and then I'm going to join these wires. So what we can do is we can snip these off a little bit. Actually, I'm going to wait, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both these in and get these glued into place. So we got the red one in, and now we need a white SMD. Now I will tell you the simple thing about what type of resistor you need for these. Now the red and the white call for slightly different resistor ratings. I think it's the white is 3.0. I believe that calls for at least a 300 ohm resistor, and the next closest resistor for that, let's take a look. Now there is a little calculator you can use to figure this out if you want, but I'm gonna make this as simple as possible. So you just put in the voltage you're using, which is 9 volts, the voltage that you need to operate whatever the LED is, in this case this SMD. Let's go with the white calls for a 3 volts and 20 milliamps, and click to calculate, and it's going to tell you that it's 300 ohms is the minimum resistor that you need. The next available, now they don't make, as far as I know, a 300 ohm resistor, so you got to go with the next available rated resistor, which is 330 ohms. So that one calls for a 330 ohm resistor, and then the other one, the red, is 2 volts is what we need for that, and calculate. That's 350 ohms minimum, and the next available resistor is 390 ohms. So that being said, with these SMDs, I will typically use a resistor value between 400 and 600 ohms. And the reason why is there's really not that much difference in the light output that you're going to get. I rigged up a real quick example here, And I've put 3 SMDs on here, the same red SMDs. And I've put different value resistors on. This one is using a 390 ohm. This one's using 510 ohm. And this one's using a 1000 ohm resistor. So when you power these up, see if I can get these untangled. All right, when you power these up, between the 3 lights, there's no noticeable difference between the brightness value. And you know, somebody could say, I don't know if putting these all together, running them off the same battery, you know, affects the resistance on these. I don't think so, because it's still running up. All the resistors on the other side of the resistor is all separate. So, but anything from 390, which is the minimum for the red resistor, or the red SMD, all the way up to 1000, there's really no visible difference or loss of light. So you really don't have to use the exact resistor that it calls for. So typically I'll use anything, like I said, between a 400 and a 600 ohm resistor on these, and they'll work just fine. Now, as a matter of fact, on these, the one I'm going to be using for the build, I'm going to use a 500 and, I think it's a 500 and, no, actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to use a 1000K resistor on these, on all these SMDs I'm using on this build. And that's just because I do want to try to bring the lighting down a little bit, even though it's not really, sitting here looking at it, it's not really any noticeable difference. But it you know, it doesn't hurt. The higher the resistor, the chance, you can always use a higher rated resistor, but you don't want to use a lower rated resistor. A resistor that's too low is going to burn that SMD or that LED out quick. Whereas if I use a higher one, and actually when I'm looking at it in the viewfinder here, this one here does look a little bit dimmer than this one here. But looking at it right here in person, it really doesn't look any different. So, but at any rate, I always use a step above anyway on the resistors. And if I want to dim it down more, I'll use an even higher resistor. I think on my Reliant build, when I did the 3 lights under the bridge dome, I used like a 54,000 or 50 some thousand ohm resistor to bring it down enough to where it wasn't, you know, too overly bright. So at any rate, you know, like I said, you don't have to use the exact rated resistor that it's calling for, but you don't want to go, you know, if it's calling for 300 ohm minimum, you don't want to go to a 280 or that, because you're going to burn that thing out real quick. So at any rate, so we got these SMDs. We got the red one in front, and this is the white one for the back. So we get these threaded in here. And these things just don't cooperate today. There we go. And bam, there it goes. So it sits right in there. So these sit perfectly in those holes with the 1/32 drill bit drill out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these set into place. Now you can use hot glue, but the quickest thing to do right now is to just use a little bit of super glue. On both of these. I'll make sure these are snug again. And then I'm going to hit it with the Instaset. Now remember, this stuff won't mess up the paint or that, so you don't have to worry about that Instaset doing anything to it. But that's going to get those locked into place real quick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these out. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going through the same stuff on video, but I'm going to lay these wires out. And I'm going to get these set in place. Got that in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these up a little bit. This one I'm going to have to put a resistor on. We'll put it about right here. And the other thing I want to say too is you'll get a lot of questions sometimes about whether the resistor goes on the negative or positive. Honestly, I don't think it really makes a difference. I was taught to always put on the negative, so I always put mine on the negative side. But the only time I don't is if I'm using like a Tena controls board that calls for the resistors to be on the positive, then I'll put the resistor on the positive. It just so happens in this case that that Tena controls board that I'm using for the flasher, the resistor is called for to be on the negative side. So I put it on the negative side, and that's what I typically do though, is just put them on the negative side. Cut that there. I'll cut the negative a little bit shorter so when I put the resistor on, it's not sticking out so much. So anyway, I've got these cut, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to heat up my soldering iron here, and I'm going to get the resistor soldered on these, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at how it is. Be right back. All right, so I've got those resistors in, and you can see I've already kind of glued them a couple times in place to run them to the front. Obviously with that chiller grill going all the way around the back side here, really the only place to run these down without them obstructing the light is on the sides here. So I'll work these down into the sides, and the next thing we got to put in here though for the top part, and this is all being put on the top part, but next thing we got to do is put in the LED strip. Now I typically get my LED strips from LED Supply, and they're rated for up to 12 volts, but they light up just fine on 9 volts. Now this one here is actually a leftover from a Tena controls kit I had, where I used a different LED strip, the LED strips I got from LED Supply, and I decided to go ahead and use these, and you can see they light up blue. I don't know if they're showing up on camera blue, but they light up blue, and now I'd already used these before and decided I didn't like them and went with the other LED strip, but these are lighting up fine. I already did the other nacelle, so I know these light up fine on these. So anyway, we'll just place this in. Now because the adhesive isn't any good on this, I'm going to have to use just a little bit of super glue, CA glue, whatever you want to call it, to kind of tack it down real quick. Try and get this to lay as flat as possible. And you'll see on this that I've already tacked the wires on the front connectors here. And it's not hard to do. I do recommend a couple things though. If you're going to do some soldering, get yourself a decent soldering station like this one here. Don't get those $9, $10, $15 soldering irons. They just don't do a good job. I think I paid $35 for this off of Amazon. I'll put the link for this up as well if anybody's interested in it. But I think I paid $30 or $35 for that soldering iron, and I'm gonna tell you, it's the best investment I made as far as being able to work with these electronics. I can crank that thing up and it'll light the it'll melt that solder down with no problem. So get these soldered on, and I'm gonna come over with some hot glue and just kind of tack this stripping because the adhesive is gone on it. So I don't want to just rely on just that little bit of super glue to hold it in place. Now if you don't know, most of your LED strips like this are going to be pre-resistored for up to 12 volts. So there were a couple, there are some of the HDA model work cells that are not pre-resistored, and if you plug them into a 9-volt power source, you'll fry them right away. They do have to have a resistor put on them. I learned that lesson a long time ago, but for the most part, all the LED strips, if you get them from LED Supply, for example, they are going to be pre-resistored for up to 12 volts. And they'll say 12 volts on them, but trust me, 9 volts lights them up just fine. I shown the example in the other nacelle I already did. So, but anyway, all right. So this is all this wiring is tacked in place. What I'm going to do here in a little bit is just kind of bunch all this wiring together and have it run right up the side here. As a matter of fact, I've got that in place already. I'll just go ahead and put some hot glue on it. So I got it right where I want it. And we'll go ahead and tack that in place, and that'll hold that to the side there. So that way when we go to do the bottom half here, these wires will be secured in place. And we want to make sure that these stay close to the side. Because remember, we're going to have that red LED in here that's going to light that front bussard. So got those in place. We'll make sure and wait for this hot glue to kind of set up a little bit. All right, it's already starting to set, so we'll set that aside because we're done with that part for now. So the next thing to do on this is to get that chiller grill. As soon as I remember where I put my chiller grill in, there it is. Is to get this chiller grill in place. And it's just going to sit down in there just like that. But I don't want to make the same mistake I made last time and not have this thing properly seated when I glue it. So I'm going to work on this, and we'll come back and take a look at it after I get this cemented in place. So stay tuned. All right, so I've got the chiller grill installed on the bottom half, and I went ahead and mounted it to the wing, the pylon wing here, because one thing I didn't think about when I did the first nacelle, and it's not going to be a problem, but it's probably going to be a little bit harder to do all this wiring out here and then push it up in here and then make sure that it doesn't interfere with the light coming out the side of the grills, or that I can't see the wires sticking up. It's probably going to be better to do that by, and I did putty this and wait for that to dry so I can sand it some more. But I think it's going to be easier to do this with it already attached to the pylon wing. So I've got it on there. It's already glued in place. And the next thing we need to do, or the only thing left to do as far as lighting on this, since we already did the rest of the lighting on the top half here, is we need to put in a 3mm red LED in the front to light the bussard collector. So now again, I'll put the link for these. These are pre-resistored, so right out of the package, you can light this up. You don't have to on the screen. You don't have to put another resistor on here unless you want to bring the lighting down, but the lighting seems to be fine on it from the other one, the first bussard I did, or the first nacelle I did. So we got to install this in the front here. So what I did was I've got a 3mm drill bit chucked in my pin vise here. And all I'm going to do is just drill a hole right in the center here in the front of the part from Lake Monster Details. All right. So I got that drilled in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this wire through that hole I just drilled. I may have to enlarge this a little bit. No, it should. There we go. I was going to say, I was pretty sure those just fit in there when I did the other one. So you work those through, and then that LED is going to sit perfectly right on top of that. So all we got to do there, you can either use hot glue, or you can just use some CA glue. Put some CA glue on there. And I'm trying to make sure that this is pointing straight out. We don't want it pointed at an angle. So we want this to point straight out as much as possible. And then we'll just take some of the accelerator. Give that a second. All right, and that's already worked, already solidified there and locked in place. And what we're going to have to do is the resistor sticks out the back here, and we don't want it blocking or interfering with the light. So what we can do is just bend this a little bit. You don't have to bend it a lot, just bend it down so it's out of the way. And then what I'll do is I'll put a little more CA glue in the bottom here to lock these down so they don't spring up on us and cause any problems. All right. So you can see that's locked in place. It's not going anywhere. And let's just do a test here real quick. I do like to do light tests every so often on these to make sure that all the lights are working properly. So we've got that ready, and we can cut this wire down a little bit. And I do recommend having a pair of wire strippers. But in this case, I'm just going to cut this about right there with my scissors. And we don't need that much wire on there. And then we'll come in with the wire strippers and strip a little bit of the cover off of here. All right. So now we got that done. The next thing to do is we're going to take all of this wiring that we did in the front on the top part here, and basically we just want to run it you got a little bit of a gap right under the insert here. There's a little bit of a gap under there. I don't know if you can really tell on camera, but basically just take all your wires. I may need some tweezers to kind of help work these under there. Grab my tweezers so we can fish these on through here. All right, there we go. So we got all of our wires running here. And we'll just get this all close together. And what I'll do is we'll get all these wires run on the inside here, and what I'll do is I can either use the hot glue or I can use the CA glue again with the accelerator, and we'll get it so that all this wiring is sitting to the one side here so it's not blocking anything. And then once we do that, that'll lock all that wiring in place, and we can start working on getting all these wires tied together. You see my two separate circuits here. I've got one here and one here. One of these is going to be for that blinking strobe on the back, and the other one's going to be for all of the static on or steady on lights. So let me get all this tidied up and locked down in place, and we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, so we've got it all wired together. I've got all the wires soldered and hot glued down. I do recommend getting some of the shrink tubing. I don't know off the top of my head what size it is, but it's like the smallest. It's the smallest shrink tubing you can get, just about. I think I got this from HD Model Works as well. But you definitely want to use something to protect your wiring. So not only does it keep it from shorting out, but it also helps to kind of support it. Support the solder so it doesn't come apart. So but anyway, I've done that, and I've got everything glued down out of the way so it's not going to interfere with the grills, and our wires are run up the side here. So let's close this up. Remember, I moved that rear locator pin so I don't have anything back there to hold it in place. But let's just put this in place here if I can get all this to stay together for a minute. And I actually have the wiring run into the what's the resistor for that? Actually, the wiring running from the pylon wing. So I've got that all wired up. Now I will say that I gave myself a scare a minute ago when I was testing out the lighting. I plugged this in and everything lit up and immediately went out, and I thought for sure I crossed the wire and I fried the whole thing or something. But after testing all the wiring with the batteries, come to find out I unplugged this from the wall. There was a little residual power in it, apparently enough to light this up for a second, just enough to scare the crap out of me. So anyway, I got it plugged back in now, and I don't have anything on these wires, so let's just make sure they're not touching. But just go, well, let me go over this real quick. So the Tena controls board here uses the negative to control the flashing of the strobe. So basically all your positive wires are going to run together, and then you're going to have two separate circuits for the negative. The negative is what controls the flashing on that board. So you're going to have a negative, you're going to have a positive for everything. Everything's going to run together into one positive connection. And then you're going to have two negatives. You're going to have a negative for the static on lights, the ones that stay on all the time. And then you're going to have a separate negative for the just for the flashing strobe lights. So that's how that wires up. Let's plug this in. And there we go. Let me turn this light out. And let's take a look. There you go. You can see she's all lit up. Obviously, I've still got to close everything up and do some seam work on this front seam up here. But she looks good, and she's not got that piece in the back blocking it. So at least this one will look good. But at any rate, so that pretty much does it. That's how these are lit up. That's how I'm lighting these anyway. There's different ways to do it, but this is what works for me. And hopefully just going over this and telling you what to use and how to use it, if you've never done lighting before, maybe you'll take a chance and try following these steps. And obviously if you've got any questions, if there's something maybe I glossed over and you have any questions about anything that maybe I didn't mention, please feel free to hit me up. You can email me at ensignschair@gmail.com, or you can check me out on my Facebook page. You just do a search for Ensign's Chair on Facebook, and it should come up. And also the links for everything is down in the notes below. So I will go back and figure out where I got all this stuff from and post links for this stuff as well, all the wiring and everything. And I do recommend, like I did, I mentioned that I recommend having a good soldering iron. You're probably going to want a set of these helping hands too. You can get these just about anywhere, but they do come in handy. And other than that, I think that's going to be it for this episode, guys. I think we're running kind of long. So, but anyway, I think that covers it. Like I said, if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to shoot me a message, and I'm more than happy to answer you back. But hopefully this gives you some insight if you've never done lighting on these models before. Let me turn this off so we can take a look at this again. If you've never done lighting on any of these models, hopefully this gives you some insight as to what you do and how you do it and the stuff you need to do it. So at any rate, I just want to say thank you again to everybody that's subscribing. I've had a lot of new subscribers over the past probably 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe because everybody was bored of the holidays and they just decided to look at something and they decided to look at my face. No, that's not true. Although you guys are here for the models. So at any rate, guys, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. If you don't want to subscribe, at least please hit that like button down below. Maybe leave me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. So again, thank you to Cash for these parts, for the nacelles here. These are great. And thank you to Gus for the decals, which I keep saying this, but we are getting close to using those decals that Gus sent here shortly. So we'll get to take a look at those. But at any rate, guys, thank you everybody for watching. Until next time, keep modeling.